So Pastor Bud and I actually over the last several weeks have been talking about not just the Global Leadership Summit, but about the idea of leadership as a whole. And we were noticing how there are, of course, there would be people who would take issue with that definition of leadership, the one that just says leadership is influence, and we all have influence, so that makes us all leaders. Well, inevitably, there are going to be ones who will say, okay, but you're never going to catch me as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company leading a boardroom full, that's just, because that's what our picture of leadership looks like. It's the person on stage, it's the person with the most to say, right? And I guess in their defense, we can't all be leaders in that sense because you're not a leader if nobody's following you, right? So somebody's got to follow. But the more we talked about it, we came to the conclusion that quite honestly, leadership looks a lot of different ways. And I actually, just the other day, came across a definition of leadership, the most robust definition I've seen for leadership, and I wanted to share it with you this morning. It just says, leadership is the art of motivating a group of people to act toward achieving a common goal. And that can look a lot of different ways, right? It can be as simple as, hey, if anybody's sticking around after a second gathering today, we could use a lot of help getting the chairs picked up because we have the blood drive coming up on Wednesday. And every time Pastor Jeremy makes that announcement, every 56 days, inevitably, there's just, a dozen, probably 24 people that stick around that help out. 5 minutes later, the place is pristine and ready to go. Because we have effectively motivated a group of people to act toward a common goal, and with nothing more than just a simple request.
Yeah, absolutely. And what if, Miss Rita Jean walks in after the gathering and goes, guys, my car battery died, and I don't know what to do. Can anybody come help me? I don't doubt that there'd be at least half a dozen guys out there within the minute to help.
Because nobody motivates like Grandma Rita Jean, but motivates people to act toward a common goal, right? Yeah. And it's just that simple. Here's another example for you. So I recently had the opportunity to work with New Hope's safety and security team to update our policies and procedures for emergencies here at New Hope. And, thank God those kinds of things happen infrequently, but we always want to be prepared for when we do unfortunately have something come up. And so we sat down with the documentation and went through a process. Actually, I'm hoping some of you noticed we have some new signage up in the building now as a result, some evacuation plan signs at each of the exits and actually the entrance to the auditorium. There's even signs that say safe shelter in places here in the building, like the men's restroom and the entire downstairs basement area. So, the basic gist is, obviously, if the emergency is inside the building, we're going to make our way out. If the emergency is outside the building, we're going to make our way in, right? And that is way oversimplifying things. But we did go through a process of updating our procedures, and part of that process involved our local fire department. We wanted to make sure that our emergency care providers were all on the same page, and really that we were doing everything right and completely. And so we sat down and had that conversation, and it was after we'd gone through dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, that one of the staff at the fire department looks at me and he says, here's the thing. And he points to the part of the policies and procedures that was referring to the active shooter situation, because again, unfortunately in this day and age, we have to have plans in place for that sort of thing too. He pointed to that part. He said, you know what, here's the thing. He says, I like what you have here. I think you guys are doing good to prepare yourself. But he said, I know the people that go to your church. He said, if there was an active shooter, there wouldn't be for long. I went, hand to God, amen. But that's what it looks like, just motivating people to act together toward a common goal, right? That's leadership.
Okay, but that's kind of a long definition. We just kind of threw a lot out there. Is there a way to shorten it up, maybe?
Absolutely. You know what we could say? We could just say leadership is the art of motivating people, a group of people. Leadership is the art of motivating a group of people, right? We could say it that way.
But what if I'm not comfortable in front of a crowd?
Okay, but what about those who aren't comfortable in front? Can they still be leaders? Absolutely. Well, okay, so let's take another look at that definition. We could just say leadership is the art of motivating, right? And motivating is really, it's just having an influence, right? Walking in, presenting a request, seeing it met, it's having an influence. It's making an impact, and that you don't have to do in a crowd. You can do that one life at a time.
That's good. I don't think people realize just how much of an impact they have on the world around them. I mean, it's a kind of a silly way to put it, but I thought about maybe a negative impact kind of influence that we have on the world day to day. So what if one of you were to come over to the Patterson residence and use the restroom, and maybe the toilet paper gets used up in your visit? If you, by chance, don't return the toilet paper and I'm the next one in the bathroom, that has made an impact on my life. The bathroom visit is not going to look the same as it might have if there were toilet paper there. It's the same kind of deal if I was walking through the kitchen and Liam had just made a sandwich and there are undoubtedly a bunch of crumbs on the counter, so my first instinct is to brush them onto the floor. But then they don't go away. You know that, right? They're on the floor now, and somebody else has to clean them up. I made an influence on probably Mom's life, because she has to sweep the floor now, and they get on everybody's socks. And
Okay, so actually I have another good one for you. We always try to leave people with some kind of a handhold, like some kind of a tangible reminder of the things that we talked about that morning, right? Something that when they walk away, that'll maybe happen in everyday life that'll make them think about what we talked about, right? Okay, so here's my example. Boogers.
okay.
Yeah, we've all got them, right? But here's what happens, right? Watch this. So, just say, got a little something going on up here, and there's no tissue to be found, right? So what do? We resort to the old, effective, popular pick and flick, right? So pick, pew, right? Pick and flick, right? But here's the thing. Y'all act like those things disappear magically midair, and they don't. They don't. They go someplace. So here's the deal. Next time you pick and flick, I want you just to think, I just had an impact on the world. Because that landed someplace. Probably landed on somebody, come to think of it, or something somebody's going to touch. You just changed the world. You'll pick and flicker.
Luckily, that isn't just true for negative impact,
This
right?
is true.
I mean, it can be just as easy to have a positive impact too.
Right, super easy.
Actually, we ran across a really good example of this the other day. Actually, a TikTok video. Check this out.
Driving through my little old town, and that scrapyard is the scrapyard that I worked at when I was like 14. Every day for lunch, I'd walk right up here to this Dairy Queen and get like a Hunger Buster Jr. and a small milkshake for $2. I was always embarrassed because I'd be so dirty in that restaurant, but I was hungry, and it gave me a chance to sit in the air conditioner before I had to go back to work in the heat. Then I got fired because I was only 14. By the time I was old enough to get a real job, this new pizza place had opened in town. I wanted to be one of the cool kids and work at the pizza place, so I go in there and try to get a job. The owner of the pizza place was like, "Hey, aren't you that dirty little kid that used to come in the Dairy Queen every day at lunch? I was the manager, I remember you." Just like that, all the embarrassment I'd ever felt sitting in that restaurant had resurfaced because I'd been recognized as the dirty kid that sat in the restaurant. I was thinking, well, I'm not good enough to work here, he knows who I am. But he said, I saw you every single day, so I know you'll show up for work. You were the dirtiest person I saw every single day, so I know you'll work. If I could hire 20 more people just like you, I would. That was the last time I ever felt embarrassed about having to get dirty for work, because you never know who's watching your hustle, and you never know what opportunities will come of it.
That's right.
Isn't that beautiful? You never know who's watching your hustle. A store manager saw something in that kid that maybe we wouldn't have seen, but it doesn't matter. He called it out and he changed that guy's life.
So I have a question for you, Christopher. What would you say is the one thing that I am most passionate about in this life?
Well, you spend a lot of time on trying to help others become all God who is created to be. All God created them to be.
There you go. And actually, that's why I was so excited that you and I got to be part of the teaching team for this month's series, because that's literally what we're talking about. We're spending the whole month talking about how to become all that God created us to be so that we can be the best and most effective tools in the hands of our Creator, helping other people come to know and love Jesus. We started out this year, 2022, calling it the Year of the Church. We did a whole teaching series on God the Father. We did a whole teaching series on God the Son. We did another whole month's teaching series on the Holy Spirit and the great I Am, right? The Trinity, all three of them together. And this month, we get to talk about who I am as a result, right? And in response to that, I am influential. And guys, whether or not we want to admit to that and take the responsibility for it, we are influential. We are leaders. We are the church. We talk about being the hands and feet of Jesus. I'm a servant of God. So really what we're asking this month is, what am I in response to who he is? What am I as a result of all that he is? Am I actively engaging in the process of figuring that out? Because I'm honestly convinced intentionally becoming all that we were created to be is our only acceptable response to his sacrifice for us. Let me say that again. Intentionally, not accidentally, not passively, not it'll happen someday. Intentionally becoming all we were created to be is our only acceptable response to his sacrifice for us. And one of the ways we do that, just one of the ways we do that, is through the Global Leadership Summit that we keep talking about. And to that end, let me just give you a super quick update. We have 10% of our church family who have signed up to help pull that event off. That is amazing. We have another 10% of our church family who are signed up to attend. But guys, 10 and 10 is only 20, right? And when we're talking about an opportunity that is so at the heart, so near and dear to the heart of the leadership of this church family, I know, I'm convinced we can do better than 20%. Because something like the GLS is what we would call low-hanging fruit. It's super easy to get to. It's super attainable. Plus, here's the great thing. It's engaging. It's inspiring. I always leave recharged and encouraged with new ideas. And it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. So when we looked for a scripture for preaching today, we headed to the book of 1 Timothy, and that's basically Paul's letter to Timothy while he was a pastor at the church of Ephesus. So a couple notes before we get into this. Timothy actually served with Paul during his second missionary journey. And then after that mission, Timothy continued serving as a missionary and a church leader. And then now he's a young pastor in the church at Ephesus.
The book of 1 Timothy is just chocked full of great content on church leadership. It talks about the importance of sound teaching. It talks about how to deal with false teachers in the church, the responsibilities and qualifications of church leadership as Paul saw them. It talks about appropriate conduct for Christians, how we ought to be conducting ourselves. It talks about guarding the church's reputation in the world. And you get to 1 Timothy 4, verse 11, and Paul tells Timothy, I need you to command and teach these things. There's a lot of great content here. This is what I need the believers in Ephesus to know. Command and teach these things. And the very next verse, 1 Timothy 4:12, is kind of like a, oh, hey, and by the way, right? Because that verse says this. It says, don't let anybody look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity.
That's good. You know, I think Paul is telling Timothy, and really us, two things that are, well, it's true for us today. So number one in that verse is be you. As Christians, as believers, it's important for us to live into all that God created us to be and be intentionally developing that within ourselves. And then there's the not let anybody else's conceptions or perceptions, opinions, let them influence you. I can tell you from personal experience that people are not going to want you to be all who God created you to be and do the things that he wants you to. But being you is important. It's to the heart of God, and it's what he wants for us. And just like Miss Shelley says all the time, you're performing for an audience of one. You're not performing for an audience of everybody around you, but rather it's to God, and whoever sees you, sees you. And to that end, the second thing that he's telling us in that verse is to be an example. When you stand up, you're likely to stand out. Accept the reality that others are watching you and often taking their cues from you. And then take every opportunity to inspire, to influence, and to make that positive impact.
And in that same verse, Paul gives us 5 different ways that we can do that. The first one, we influence with our speech. We can inspire and influence just by the words that we choose, because what we say really matters. So am I the perpetual Debbie Downer? Am I always going to see what's wrong with the situation? Or am I going to speak life and hope and encouragement into people and into situations? Am I going to use my words to tear things down or tear people down? Or am I going to use my words to build them up? Am I going to use words that create division? Or am I going to use my words to motivate a group of people to act towards achieving a common goal?
Yeah. And that second one was conduct, right? How we live. We can inspire and influence by the decisions we make, by the way we conduct ourselves and how we respond to the world around us rather than reacting to the world around us, and by giving grace to other people. Because keep in mind, people are always watching. And the third one is love. We influence with our love. You've heard the old adage, people may not remember you by what you do or what you say, but they'll always remember you by how you make them feel. And that might be cheesy, but our gentleness, our kindness, our willingness to give the benefit of the doubt, I mean, these are game changers for people. I think going out in the world, you don't see a lot of godly love. So make people say, wow, that person loves a lot more than other people. I mean, I think that's cool.
Yep. The next one is our faith. Guys, we can influence the world around us just by our faith. And that's just what we think about God, right? Do we believe that he means what he says? Do we believe that he'll make good on his promises? If we live like we do, that, I mean, obviously affects our spiritual journey, but guys, it affects the spiritual journey of those around us too. And the last one is purity. We influence the world around us by our purity. Did you know that you can destroy in one moment what it took years to build? For the good or for the bad, we inspire and influence by our integrity.
So in Timothy's case, his issue was his age, right? In that verse, don't let anybody look down on you because you are young. Mm-hmm. But I guess you could just about fill that blank with anything, right?
That's true.
Here, don't let anybody look down on you because you are blank. What do you guys think? Do you have anything you could fill that blank with? Old?
Old.
That's good.
Young.
Mm-hmm.
Disabled.
Poor, yeah.
Rich, for that matter.
Yeah.
Right? Tall, short. Married, not married, divorced, remarried. What'd you say, Betty Jo? Crazy. Crazy. Don't let anyone look down on you because you're crazy. Or overly optimistic or overly energetic.
So really you could say it this way. Don't let anyone look down on you.
Period.
But set an example for those around you by how you continue to be and develop who it is God made you to be.
There's another example that we see in Scripture. In the book of Exodus, chapter 14, that's where we read the account of the Red Sea and how God used Moses to deliver the Israelites out of the hand of Egyptian captivity. What do you think Exodus 15 has to say? What do you think the Israelites did as soon as they made it across the Red Sea?
Well, they probably partied.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And if you read in Exodus chapter 15, that same stuttering Moses that Rob talked about in the video earlier, he led the children of Israel in 19 verses of celebratory song and just this beautiful retelling of what they had just seen God do for them. There are scriptures in there that the horse and the rider were thrown into the sea, and the Lord has rescued us from the hand of captivity. It's this beautiful song of celebration and enjoying what it was that God had just done for them. But Moses wasn't the only one in that story with something to say. His sister Miriam was right there too. And Miriam, she had something to say too. But she could have, Moses has already started the song, so I guess I'll just let him do it. Well, he is the leader of Israel. Probably it's best for him to, kind of take charge here. It would be strange if I cut him off I wouldn't want to step on his toes by adding anything, because that might offend his gentle sensibilities, so I don't, That's not what she did. Miriam got involved. In verses 20 and 21, she did not use Moses as her excuse to continue sitting there in silence. She was true to who God made her to be. And in doing so, she influenced those around her. And we see that in just those two verses. Exodus 15, verse 20 and 21 talks about how Miriam then jumps to her feet, grabs her timbrel, which I'm assuming is like a tambourine maybe, and starts leading in song. And all the women do the same thing. They all grab their timbrels and jump up and start singing and celebrating God too. I was recently reading a new-to-me author named Crystal Stein, who wrote about Miriam in her article, Sing to the Lord. She said Miriam was a true leader among the people of Israel. Let me just read you a part of her article. Crystal said she'd crossed the Red Sea. Miriam had witnessed what God had done, and it was in response to that that she used what she had. She had her voice, her instrument, her influence, and she used those things to lead other women in recognizing what God had done for them and proclaiming it to the crowd. She goes on to say, we don't have to have perfect voices or stages to perform on or a special title to do what we were created to do. You influence the people that God placed in your life when you proclaim what he's done for you, when you give him credit, right? When you remember his faithfulness, and when you encourage others to do the same. She goes on to say, think about who is watching and learning from you, because to them, you are a leader. You're showing them what it means to honor God. You're teaching them to bring their whole self to the foot of the cross without shame or hesitation. Guys, Miriam didn't need Moses' job or his position or his title to make an impact. She just needed to be who God made her to be and use that to make a difference.
Yeah. So back to what you and Pastor Bud were talking about. I think we make leadership out to be this big, scary monster, kind of just to let ourselves off the hook. But what if leadership in its simplest form is just having influence? And that can happen in all kinds of simple ways all day long. I mean, back to the book of 1 Timothy, we read 1 Timothy 4:11 and 1 Timothy 4:12, but right afterwards, 1 Timothy 4:13 sure says, teach the believers, but it also says, be an encouragement to believers. It doesn't have to be, stand up on stage and give a lecture or a sermon, but it can just be one-on-one encouragement. Actually, I have a good example of this. So about a month ago, I was invited to attend Buckeye Boy State, and anybody that doesn't know what that is, basically the American Legion all over the country invites boys that are going into their senior year to go do a mock government. So Buckeye Boy State is Ohio's version of that, and we all went to Miami University, and we got to learn all about state government. And I could have ran for governor, but I didn't. I ended up as the photographer for the magazine, which you can thank Chris and Nicole McClelland for that interest. But I was down maybe at the bottom of the ladder of,
Social responsibility.
Social responsibility, yes. So I wasn't going to have that, get up on stage every night and say words of encouragement and praise to a bunch of people that are going to forget about it in 5 minutes. And there's nothing wrong with governors and even people in like the Buckeye Boy State up to real life people in leadership, because I think that stuff is important, and I think the things people say can leave people changed and marked. But I think it can be even more powerful to have that low-level influence just one-on-one. I had plenty of guys that I worked with, that I ate with, that I dormed with, that I could talk to and encourage when there were guys who didn't know what they were doing with their life or didn't like their station or where they were. I could tell them that they're doing a good job and love on them and just become friends, because I didn't have to be up on a pedestal to love and encourage and lead.
That's right. There was actually another experience that we had that same weekend. Buckeye Boy State runs a full week, and it's the final weekend that the families go down and pick up the students. So Rob and Liam and I had driven down to Oxford, and actually there was a kind of a break in the action, so we got to pick up Christopher after his obligations were finished up that afternoon and have a little window of time for the boys to swim in the hotel before the evening's activity started. But is that rain? Yes. Okay. Squirrel. I'm sorry. But so as we're all arriving at the hotel, actually, this is a good example of what just happened. I got so distracted by something that was happening in the driveway of the hotel. We're there. We've just arrived. We're going to go in and get checked in. We're getting our bags out of the car. And I just happened to notice another vehicle that had also pulled in to stay in the same hotel. Out of that vehicle climbs Mom first, who just cute as a button, the hair ever so done, the makeup on point, the cute floral print dress, the matching pumps and purse, and just done to the nines, cute as a button. Out of the other side of the car hops Dad. Hair ever so done, makeup on point, fire engine red lipstick, floral print dress, matching pumps and purse. And in that moment, guys, can I just tell you, I prayed that my face did not show what my head was thinking. Only because, and here's the thing, guys, we don't see a lot of that type of lifestyle where we live, right? So it was just a little bit of a shock to the system, right? So I just dialed in my face, called on all of my theater training for the next several minutes. We all walked in together. They checked in just before us. They went to their room. We went to ours. Next time my path crossed with this individual was actually the next morning at breakfast. Now, I should paint a little bit of a picture for you because we stayed at a Comfort Inn. I mean, it wasn't like, hotel with hourly rates. I mean, we stayed at a decent place, right? But God bless them, they were so short-staffed that they had one poor gentleman who was supposed to be manning the counter, the check-in counter, greeting new guests, checking out old guests, answering the phone. He was also supposed to be manning the breakfast area, preparing the food, replenishing all the supply. Like, it just was more than any one person should have to do. And the poor guy barely spoke English. It was just a hot mess, right? So there we stand, all of us hangry, right? It's a kind of a common theme in our house. But, and again, I mean, I'm going to have grace for the poor guy because he's, there's just the one fella. But who walks in and stands behind me in line in the little eating area but Dad in another cute little floral dress and matching pumps and purse and the fire engine red lipstick and the cute little hairdo. And now I could have taken significant interest in that waffle maker. Oh my gosh. To keep from having to acknowledge the fact that there was a person standing right behind me that I wasn't sure how to interact with. Or I could turn to the person and treat them like the beautiful creation of God that they are and look them in the eyes and have a civil, honoring, dignifying conversation. It just sounds like, hey, good morning. What are you doing here? Waiting on the waffle maker, evidently. But just, hey, what brings you to Oxford? Where are you from? Tell me about your family. Now, guys, can I just say there were all kinds of questions in my head that I chose not to ask. Right? I'm happy to die with all those questions still in place. Some things you just don't want to know. But in that moment, could I use that one-on-one, life-on-life impact to just have an influence, to treat a person in a way that they might not otherwise get treated regularly, right? To be the hands and feet of Jesus, and just as importantly, if not more so, to show my sons who are sitting there how to behave in those situations.
And I don't even think it has to be like orchestrated like that,
or outside the bounds of normalcy.
Yes, I think it can be just an everyday occurrence that we can have impact on other people. I think a great example was this week we went to Michigan to go see Mom's mom, my grandma, and we did lots of stuff, but one night we had the opportunity for just me and Liam to go out to dinner with Grandma. And so we had a plan in place, and turns out restaurant A was, not dine-in, it was takeout only, and place B was a similar situation. So all around town we drive, and we finally land on Pizza Hut, and we walk in, and the waitress kind of stumbles up, and Grandma goes, "How are you tonight?" And the waitress just kind of looks at us, and Grandma goes, "No, how are you?" And she goes, "Well, I'm the only waitress." And from the sounds of it, there was only one or two cooks, kitchen workers, and it was a packed restaurant. And we got seated, and after 30 minutes of waiting for us to take our order, or waiting for her to take our order, and then 30 minutes more of waiting for food, we ate our food, and it was interesting to me that, we were all hangry. We were, it was a poor situation, but instead of being begrudging and groaning the fact that things weren't to our liking, What grandma did was she left a note on the receipt, on the tip, and didn't leave a scroungy tip
I was going
either.
to say, she left a tip.
And yeah,
A good
and
one.
then she could have an awesome conversation with this waitress that was young and scared and say, actually, you did a great job, and we're proud of you, and you did awesome. And, that's a lot more impactful
Yeah.
than saying something bad. It's having a good impact on that person's life.
Yeah.
And that opened the door for her to have a conversation with me and Liam on the way home. She had an influence on that girl, which had an influence on her grandchildren.
Yeah. So we've talked this morning about how easy, guys, how super easy it can be to have a positive impact, how leadership doesn't have to have a stage or a platform. Leadership is just leaning into opportunities that the Lord brings along our way. We even talked about 5 easy ways to do that. But I don't want us to miss the importance of the lasting influence that those impactful moments can have. Some of you know these. Earlier this summer, we had opportunity to spend the better part of a week in Pennsylvania. And there's a picture I want to show you. In this picture, there is someone standing to Rob's left. That is Pastor Ed. Pastor Ed was Rob's pastor from the time he was probably 15, 16 years old. Rob became a believer when he was 14. So when Pastor Ed came on the scene, imagine Rob in all of his glory, this hyper excited, super energetic, big, crazy, curly-haired Jesus freak, and poor Pastor Ed going, oh my gosh, you're exhausting me right now, right? But that's not what Pastor Ed did. Pastor Ed took that young, excited teenage boy under his wing and gave him opportunity to learn to become all that God had created him to be. Then you see Rob all grown up with a son of his own doing the exact same thing for him, right? So guys, I don't think it's too much. I don't think it's overplaying my hand to say that in some ways, Pastor Ed had an influence on who Christopher has become. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not hard to connect those dots. And I think it's a beautiful thing and an important thing that we need to remember, that the impact that we have, it doesn't stop there.
And I don't think that means that we have to be perfect.
No.
It doesn't mean we have to know what we're doing. And
Good thing.
by no means, and by no means are we leading other people to us.
Right.
The whole point is leading other people to Jesus. We're leading by example, and that means pointing our eyes to Jesus. It means for us to look and to live for God and to listen for the Holy Spirit. You don't have to worry about not knowing what to do, because all Paul is saying, or all God is calling us to do, is to follow him. It's that easy.
It's that easy.